Hello, today is Wednesday, September 3rd. Welcome to episode 496 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. You've got the OG crew here. I'm joined by Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller, Senior Fellow Morgan Vigna, and NSI Junior Fellow Jessica Jones. We are going to talk about the heating up conflict with Yemen between the Houthis, the Houthi rebel group, a Shia Muslim organization that has ousted the legitimate government of Yemen, and the Israelis. Israel struck at Yemen in the last day or two, killing the so-called Houthi prime minister and foreign minister. Also, other senior advisors of the Houthi organization, they're kind of Ersatz government there. This is a significant increase in the tempo of attacks. There are other things going on. The Houthis responded this morning with an attack on a tanker near the Red Sea, which is one of the things that they do. Let's remind everyone that the Houthis are supported by Iran. They are bad actors. They have declared war on Western shipping through that region, which is of note and significant for our supply chains and other things, even our economy. They are not good people. They are allied with the bad guys. Vigna, you've been on the road for a while. We've missed you on the pod. I'm going to call on you first. What is your reaction to this increased tempo of hostile activities with respect to the Houthis?
Sure. Thanks, Les. Happy to be back with the Fault Lines crew. So first and foremost, you mentioned that the Houthis are a Shia Muslim organization. In fact, they are more than that. They are a U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization. The Trump administration had designated them during President Trump's first term. Biden took them off the FTA list, and then they have now been redesignated. So yay to that. But you're right, Les. The Houthis have been doing Iran's bidding, have been relentless on their strikes against Israel. I think what is notable specifically about this strike is that the Yemeni Houthi strike against Israel, which kicked this all off, was the use of a cluster munition, most likely provided by Iran. And it presented a clear threat that Israel clearly needed to respond to with sufficient force. However, I don't necessarily see this as Israel necessarily taking the gloves off, so to speak, but it is certainly an escalation. I think it's important to note that al-Rawa was more of a figurehead and had only been in office really a year.
That's the prime minister. That's the so-called prime minister of the Houthis.
Yeah, he didn't control the Houthi, defense forces such as they are. Abdul Malik al-Houthi, he has been head of the movement in charge of Houthi defenses since 2004 when he took over from his brother who died on the battlefield. And I think what this Israeli strike against the Houthis is particularly it's worth noting is that the Houthis aren't necessarily a sophisticated bunch. Iran, for example, learned very quickly that you don't cluster senior officials in one group and make them an easy target for an Israeli strike. So I don't think, though, that this is necessarily a deterrent to end al-Houthis' support for Iran, but it's and end strikes against Israel, clearly, since we saw that this action this morning. But I think this is certainly going to make al-Houthi think twice and start taking extra precautions himself, given that Israel has said and Netanyahu has said that Houthi leadership is on the strike list. I'll leave it to Jess to talk more about the kidnapping of the UN workers. But I think that the Houthis here are really playing a stupid game, and I think we'll see them win stupid prizes.
Jones, respond.
Less. Okay. To Morgan's point, the Houthi attacks, especially when it comes to shipping in the Red Sea, have been something we've been talking about in the pod now for what seems quite a while. And it seems that it continues to be a story that we have to talk about. Of course, the Trump administration came out hard with large scale operations against them, but that didn't seem to deter them, right? They continue to successfully launch attacks on shipping and on Israel, as Morgan points out. You do see a bit of an escalation. To Morgan's point, maybe bringing together most of your cabinet in one place, not a good idea. So I think, the scale of success here is something that's what's really driving the story, because it is such a large number of senior officials of the Houthis that have been taken out. But to Morgan's point, whether, how much that disrupts in the long term the military operations and planning in coordination with Iran, it's hard to tell because many of the cabinet officials, were not military strategic leaders. And to Morgan's point, what I found really just noteworthy about the story is that really within, a couple days of the operations, the Houthis raided UN offices. They kidnapped at least 11 staffers from the World Food Program, UNICEF, WHO. And this, in fact, and I didn't know this is not the first time they've done this. This is really the Houthis' MO. When something happens, their response is to go after international aid workers, which is crazy considering that, almost 20 million people in Yemen need support or in need of aid, right? But they're taking those folks that are actually there to help them. They've actually been holding UN, aid keepers for multiple years. There's someone who's died in captivity. The fact that this isn't in the headlines, that this isn't like an international outrage, that we don't have diplomats, that we know of calling for their return, to me is crazy, that I'm just really learning about this now. And so that's something that really stood out. And I know obviously it's, there's a civil war. It is, there's a lot collapsing in Yemen, but the idea that we are not talking about this and bringing back these crucial aid workers is, to me, just catastrophic.
Martha Miller, Morgan pointed out that the Trump administration has now twice designated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. Also, though, back in May, the Trump administration declared victory in the war against the Houthis, in our conflict against the Houthis, and said no need to carry on anymore. That was notably right before President Trump's trip to the Persian Gulf region. What are your thoughts about the way the Trump administration has handled the conflict there?
Look, I think they were right to designate them as a terrorist organization, to redesignate them as such, given that the Biden administration had taken them off that list. They were right to start Operation Rough Rider, the name of which I find both hilarious and actually really cool. The problem is, I think they declared victory a little too early, and the Houthis have survived attacks from Saudi-led, forces. They have survived, pinprick attacks over the years from the United States and the UK. And clearly they survived Operation Rough Rider because it was ended too quickly. And I guess in the name of pursuing peace. But peace has not taken place. And in fact, we still are seeing a significant disruption to global trade. 60%, trade through the Suez is down 60% compared to the pre-crisis timeframe. So we have major container ships routing around the Cape of Good Hope, which if folks refer back to their maps, will see that is a very long way to travel to get, from Asia to Europe or to North America or South America. But particularly to Europe. This is not breaking the global economy. However, it is certainly contributing to supply chain problems and inflation. There are, in fact, manufacturers who've had to, basically shut down operations due to supply chain problems presented by the Houthis' involvement there in the Red Sea. So this is not just a problem with Israel. This is a problem for our other allies in Europe, trading partners around the world, our partners such as the Saudis, who also have a problem with the Houthis. And it's a problem for us because we do, in fact, depend on global trade and supply chains being accessible to manufacturers here in the United States.
Okay. I am going to reflect back on the Israeli move here, which I view as significant and a good thing. And effectively, I don't think anyone wants to say this, Israel is acting as a proxy force for the United States in the war on terror in the Middle East. This is a good thing, even if we don't necessarily use that term. Here is a quote from the Wall Street Journal story this morning that I think is amazing. The strike also reflects an aggressive Israeli security posture in which Israel wants its adversaries to know it will hit back hard against any potential threat, say military analysts. The new doctrine is referred to among soldiers as FAFO, an acronym for F around and find out, according to one of the security officials. So, Kelly, we need to put that in the title of the show. Good for the Israelis for doing this. The Houthis are bad people. They kidnap UN officials. They fire at Western shipping. They are a menace. For some reason, China gets away with supporting them and having to deal with them. It's not good. Good for Israel for doing what they did in the last couple of days. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks always to Kelly Crowley, Keelan Wolf, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Friday, September 5 for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're now on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.